Are you there? I see you. I don't hear you. Am I in the right place?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I hear you now. But I don't see you.
You see me now?
I do. I do.
And you can hear me.
I do.
I got out here and I pulled up my laptop and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have an internet connection. I'm good, Brian. I'm sure. Thank you.
What did you do, like a hotspot on your phone or something?
Well, I also got a new phone. And so I don't know how to use all of the stuff yet. So
this is me like every day. Every day is my life.
I'm sitting here in the park. I got my laptop pulled up and I'm like, why won't it connect? Oh, right. Shit. So I just gave him my computer. It's too much to figure out, but it says it's recording. And
yeah, I see it. So you're on your phone.
I'm on my phone.
Okay. I never have success with Zoom on my phone because I never know what to do with my phone. Like, am I supposed to hold it like this the whole time?
I don't.
What are you doing with it?
I'm just holding it. I can't, and my eyesight is really bad. So like, I can hardly even see you. Like, I really want to be like, oh, there you are. There you are, Nayla.
Do you have glasses?
I do. I have a, I'm trying to get all my doctor's appointments in before
Why you still have insurance. Totally. I remember that.
So this is my first day wearing this new trial prescription of contacts. And I wear progressives and they're like, yeah, your near vision you're going to have to have readers.
Yeah. Oh, I'm at that point where I have like, my progressives are like, there's like 3 or 4 different levels in all of them. I like to say my politics are not the only thing that are progressive.
Yes, absolutely. So that's the state of affairs over here.
Amen, sister. I get it. All right. Okay. So how do you want to do this?
We can just talk.
Yep.
Okay,
It's okay. We had some questions that we drafted. We could just do that, right?
Yeah, can you pull those up? Because I can't.
Oh, on the screen? Sure.
Or you don't even have to pull them up on the screen. Let's see how that works.
Let me see how that looks. Because with you on the phone, I guess is the question. Let's see. All right. Can I do that? I want to share my screen.
Oh,
you've disabled it. That's okay.
Okay. Let me see.
Do you want to enable it, or I can just read them to you?
Yeah, just read them.
Okay. So the questions were, a top concern. Like, I thought we might just treat it like you and I are just talking about something going on with our clients this week. So one of the top concerns of my clients this week was this. Then I was asked you, I have a client who feels uncomfortable sharing her opinions at work. What do you think? She wants to know how she can support other women in using their voices together at work. And then you would ask me, something, what are you seeing in coaching this week? I have a friend who lost her job. Where do you begin? Or I have a client who was ambushed by a piece of feedback from her manager. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Let's start there because I actually I do have that question for you. Okay, ready? This is how I do like that to know like this is where it stops.
Okay.
Hey Nayla, how are you today?
Awesome. How are you?
I'm great.
It's Nayla, by the way. Can we do
Nayla. Okay. Look. Here we go.
Okay, ready.
Hey Nayla, how are you?
Awesome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I was thinking about you and I wanted to run something by you, get your thoughts.
Sure, I'm happy to help.
I have this client and we were talking about some feedback that she received on her annual evaluation. And one of the things that she shared with me is that her mentor in this organization is the supervisor of the individual that gave her the feedback. And so she's struggling with, how do I navigate that space? And so I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that since you've worked with individuals in similar situations?
So let me make sure I understand. The manager gives the feedback, but the mentor is the manager of the manager?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow, that is complicated. That's complicated stuff. Here's how I think about feedback in general. I mean, the first thing I really think about with feedback is, are we getting it often enough? Are we soliciting it often enough, right? I always say a year-end review or a mid-year review should never be a surprise. That should never be the period of time where you're hearing something for the first time. It is complicated when there is a personal relationship with the skip level manager. That can also be a great asset, because that skip level leader is going to be able to give you organizational insight that maybe even you don't have access to through your manager. But I think the thing I want to think about with feedback is soliciting a broad base of information from a number of people and trying to sift through it, looking for the real meaning. There's a couple of people I love to turn to for guidance around them. One of this is Sheila Heen, and she always says something along the lines of, it's really important to become good at taking feedback, but it's our imperative to think about whether we accept the feedback. So one of the things I like to look at is, what are all the pieces of data you're getting through feedback? Where do you see patterns? And what aligns with what's important to you in terms of your own development and growth? So I know that we're conditioned to think about people who have authority and power as it being in a place where everything they say becomes some sort of gospel, but I offer all of us the chance to be discerning when we start hearing things, regardless of whether it comes from our manager or the manager above our manager. And I hope that your friend, your client can think that way too. Like, let's look at it like data. Let's look at it neutrally and sift through it for meaning. The good thing about a mentor is that that person has a stake in your well-being.
Right.
Hopefully your manager does too. Hopefully your manager does.
Right.
But your client's in a great position to have two people looking out for her. And again, look for patterns, look for what seems true and possible. And that requires self-awareness and honesty. Sometimes, it's hard to hear things that we know are true, that we think we're better at hiding from others than we really are. But I think I look at your client and say, what a lucky situation to have two people looking out for her and offering her developmental feedback.
Thank you. Thanks for that perspective. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I have something for you, Carrie.
Okay, what's up?
I have a client who is in a small nonprofit organization that she's really passionate about. And part of being in a small nonprofit means they're a little bit understaffed. And she finds herself very busy with work and sometimes unable to communicate her strategic insights, the things she thinks are really going to move the organization forward, to the CEO. She has periodic access to the CEO, but she has a hard time lifting her head from the day-to-day work to really take advantage of those moments to elevate her voice and her ideas. I was wondering what kind of guidance you might have for her.
Sure. That's such an interesting position to be in, when she is passionate, when an individual is passionate about the work that they're doing, and they're needed in those spaces. And I particularly think about that as it relates to the nonprofit sector, and educators as well. But I just had this conversation with a client, oddly enough, and one of the things that I asked her to do, and that I would encourage you to talk to your client as well, is ask, what is that individual's vision of the nonprofit? And one of the things that so often people will do is they'll talk about the mission of the work that they're doing, and that I'm really committed to the mission. Well, ultimately what that's saying is you're committed to the steps of making something happen, as opposed to the vision. And one of the things that I think is important is sometimes when we get so caught up in the day-to-day activities, the mission steps, that we actually lose sight of the vision. And sometimes in nonprofit work, the vision, it can shift depending on funding sources, or the lack of workers in particular, right? And so you just kind of lose sight of that. And so that would be one of the first things I would suggest that you do, is to engage that person in a conversation about, well, what is the vision of the organization? What is your vision in particular of being in that role? And make sure that that message is clearly articulated with the CEO. That's the first thing. And next with that, I would then say or encourage this individual to think about what role do they want to play in meeting the vision and why. And so if your client can answer why they're interested in that and why they are committed to that, they will find that they have an inner strength. And what they then need to do is leverage that. And so, and I say that because sometimes I have found in my work that people are really caught up in the day-to-day work. I'm good at getting this task done, as opposed to my strength is bigger than that, right? And we were rewarded for that level of behavior.
Oh, of
Consistent,
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
consistently. And so, helping your client recognize what their strengths are and leverage that to have the conversation with the CEO and saying, these are the things that I need to be more productive or to really move the needle as we reach for our vision of the organization.
Hmm.
One of the, and it's, I think that that's a different perspective than what from a leadership um, development arena. I'll say what I've found oftentimes is that people will, programs will say, this is the model of leadership and this is what is effective, and you need to put that hat on. But that doesn't fit everyone, and it also doesn't fit everyone's strengths. And so, therefore, I take the approach of what are your strengths and what are your limitations? They're not weaknesses, but they're just limitations that you have right now. And let's use your strengths to leverage your limitations. And if people are working from their strengths, their voice is louder, they're more confident, they're willing to take risks because they're doing it from a place of empowerment.
Hmm. I really
So
love that.
yeah, so that's one thing that I would do is I would encourage you to have that conversation around identifying, being clear about, the vision, and if it's something that still she or he buys in, and then what are their strengths?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Something that occurs to me as you're talking about this is how often we are using outdated blueprints of what we think our strengths are.
Mhm.
That sometimes we have been told when we were, early in career or in college that you're great at this or you're great at that. And what I see a lot of clients miss the opportunity to do is update that with how their experiences of the last 10 years, 12 years, 15 years have really rounded out their strengths and what they love to do more. And so listening to you talk about this particular client I'm working with and how she has noticed her own interests and passions evolve over time, I think part of what I'm going to go back to her with is creating some practices around assessing that again and not using an outdated blueprint for her and for her team. Frankly, I think that we'll look to our leaders to model that behavior. And I think one of the behaviors I'm really working with all my leaders on is pausing
Yeah.
and reflecting and asking myself, if I think about the next 6, 12, 18 months, what am I going to have to lean into internally to get the work done? And what are natural offers I have internally to make that more available, easier, effective? So I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. One of the, you know, Nyla, one of the things that I have had a lot of success with, and going back to leadership development models, and I always include communication in that, because it's such a critical part of leadership. But the process in particular that I use is really taking people slowly through some introspective reflection. Like I just
Mm,
firmly believe, and I've been very successful at helping people realize, or not realize, but identify what are the things that I bring to the table? Why do I bring them? And really understanding them first, and then moving on to how do I create collaborative experiences? How can
right.
I be innovative? How can I lead a team to be innovative? Um, because when, oftentimes when you go through leadership and communication trainings, they're about use these steps, but then
Mm,
those steps they don't fit every work environment, they don't fit every um, level of employment, and they surely don't fit every personality.
I
And
agree.
so
I
yeah,
agree.
I like to use in coaching with individuals, I really like to use the approach of a process. And so let's look at your way of thinking. All right, and now let's look at some habits that you have, and now let's look at your team development and team interactions.
Yeah, I think we're very much aligned on that. I don't know of um, anyone who's ever really made substantial change in their behaviors who hasn't started by doing what I call the inner work, which is really understanding how you make sense of
Mhm.
how you understand your role as a leader, how you understand your success this far, how you understand your shortcomings and missteps this far, what really matters to you, what you want at this point in your career, how you want to show up for your team, where you want work to fit into your life. I don't see the point of engaging. I think otherwise we're just wearing someone else's mask, right? You're just
Yeah.
picking up a set of habits that some book tells you, or like the five, or probably a Fast Company article on like the 5 steps to more effective, this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
Those are like, they're worse than, it's like a glass of Kool-Aid, right? Like it's just
Mhm.
a sugar rush. There's nothing substantial in there.
Mhm.
We want like sustenance. We want a meal. We want like real nutrition around how to look at myself and assess myself and change myself.
Right.
So I insist that all of my clients do some form of reflection. The one I love the most is writing, pen to
Mhm.
paper, old fashioned
Yeah.
exercises, journaling, paying attention to your day, your week, the high points, the low points, taking notes. There's a reason we're all taught to take notes in high school and college. I agree with you 100% that we
Yeah.
have to start there.
Yeah. It makes me think, I'm really curious, we both have spent a lot of time in higher education, and I'm curious on your thoughts as, leading up to March 2020, and our our global shutdown. Um, Higher education was really struggling in terms of faculty and staff being asked to do more with less. And
Right.
so I'm curious, I know that you do a fair bit amount of work with individuals around their work trauma. And
Mm.
so I'm curious, what do you think? Um, how would you help someone who is engaged in or working in higher education? They are continuing now, going into the fall, being asked to take on more, to do
Yeah.
their work differently. Many middle career faculty and staff haven't been trained to live in a virtual world,
Right.
and they're burnt out, but they're so passionate about that environment and working with students. What advice would you give, or how would you guide
Hmm.
them?
It's so interesting. Today, there was a big piece in the New York Times about how campuses are talking about opening and how faculty are resisting because of their own apprehension around
Yep.
the wellness, like the health risk for themselves. And even this, what you're talking about, this unpreparedness to teach effectively. So many of us, myself included, part of our skill in the classroom is building rapport, building relationship, moving around the classroom, having that dialogue, right? I'm not standing in the front of the room dumping information. I'm engaging, I'm building, I'm co-creating with
Right.
my students. So I think there's so many ways this conversation could go. But you mentioned burnout. And I think part of what everyone has the opportunity to do in this period of time is to really pause and
Mhm.
assess, what are all of the aspects I bring to my work right now? Are there skills, whether it's experiences or whether it's what I call like your unique imprint, like it's just kind of the carry way of doing things, the Nayla way of doing things, that thumbprint that's just yours.
Mhm.
We have to kind of dump them all onto the table and say, there's all these things I know how to do that I've accumulated because I was trained, because I have these key experiences, or because it's just the way I see things. And I think we have an opportunity and almost an obligation right now to ourselves to say, which ones am I going to dive into more deeply now? Because the context has changed so substantially. We can't just rinse and repeat what we used to do
Right.
when we were back on campus or in the classroom. So listen, there's realities around all of us in terms of having to bring home revenue and income and have sustainable for sources of health insurance for our lifestyle. Like, I'm not saying that everyone has the opportunity just to be like, I'm done with that, off I go.
Right.
But I think there is an opportunity to say, all the things that I know how to do, which are the pieces that added the most value?
Mhm.
And therefore, how do I lean in most to that and do more of that? Because I'm going to have to do it like this, like the way you and I are talking
Right.
online. And I think that discernment is something we're not really accustomed to doing. Most of us are just, our plates get fuller and fuller and fuller, and it's exploding. We have job creep in every single way imaginable. And I think we have to, as individuals, and our teams and our leaders have to also help us discern, like, what is the best way I can contribute in this new context so that I can do what I do even better, and
Yeah.
maybe leave some things off the plate and let that stuff get picked up by someone who does that better.
Mhm.
But that requires, again, like we talked about earlier, that pause, that moment of reflection. Like, what actually composes a day, a week, a month in my work life? What am I actually doing with my time?
Right.
This big pause has been like the unexpected and undesirable click on that kind of cult of busy that we've all been part of for decades now.
Yeah.
So if we don't make sense, if we don't sift through it and make sense of it, I don't know how we progress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, 2 weeks ago, I did a webinar on part of that topic of focusing. And what I found so often, I was compelled to offer this webinar, is that we're caught up in the worry, right? And
Mm,
so if we think about what worrying does, one, it is completely unproductive. But more importantly, it is so taxing on us
yeah.
intellectually, emotionally, and in some cases physically. And I really had to work with the clients that were in this webinar on why not shift, right? Like, that is an unproductive exercise. Why not shift the worry to focus? And
I love
ultimately,
that.
we're doing is focusing on those things that we actually have some control over. And so, like you said, let's do a dump. Let's do a dump of our skills, our experiences, and pick up those things that we're passionate about, that we're skilled at, that we're willing to dig deep into, and not worry. Like, I would then add, let's not worry about
Right.
those other things, but rather let's focus on those things that we have some control over and move on. And when, the thought process becomes unproductive, it's really incumbent upon ourselves to recognize that and say, I'm engaging in unproductive um, behavior and ways of thinking that are not caring to not only my body, but my passion,
Yeah. And
right?
my
And
outcomes, I'd argue. I feel like that's
that's,
something that I
you're
might
right.
add to what you're saying is,
You're right.
when we are focused, we deliver better.
Absolutely.
And we're stretched super thin, the work suffers.
Absolutely. And it was so interesting because this one woman, we were talking about it in terms of her unemployment, her current unemployment. And she also, in the last year, she had lost 70 pounds. Like, so that's
Oh,
also part of her experience. And so she was sharing with me as we were talking through the webinar, sure, she was sharing her experience. She said, everything that we're talking about, the worry versus focusing, I can actually apply that to my weight loss journey
yeah.
now that she's living in a new location because of her current unemployment. She's not able to cook for herself, so on and so forth. And so when she said that, I was like, yeah, it really, it impacts all aspects of our life.
I always say that how you show up to work will probably be a really good indication of how you're showing up for the rest of your life,
Hmm.
right? And vice versa. And I think it's both illuminative and illustrative. It's something you can learn from, and it's also inspiring, because if you make a great change in one aspect of your life, you can bring it into work. Um, and this whole thing about worry is so interesting to me, because I think there's a lot we have to do individually. I also think there's something as leaders we have to do in our organizations and be paying attention, because, you mentioned the idea of being rewarded. I think we're rewarded for being a little bit afraid of work because we work harder, right? When
Hmm.
people are scared, when people are panicked, when people are worried,
Yes.
they work more hours, they say yes to everything. suits organizations, unfortunately, to have us be a little bit fearful.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is one of the big awakenings I'm seeing during this period of time, is like when you get people home, present, knowing, paying attention to the fact that, you know what, I'm actually working more
Yeah.
than this since I'm home, right? Like every commuting minute is now obsessed with, I'm spending every commuting minute in front of my computer. I know
Yep.
I am.
Yep.
I know I'm not
Everyone's
the only
eyes are
person.
getting worse.
Everyone, right? So we're working harder. We're probably worrying more. And I think I'm noticing in myself and in my clients and my friends at like the 10, 11, 12 week mark, we're all like, wait a second. Is this what the next 5, 10, 12 years are going to be like for me? Whether I go back to work or not is no longer the biggest question. The biggest
Right.
question is like, am I going to be this exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
this tired, this worried forever? I don't know if I want that. And
Yeah.
I think organizations have to understand that that's what's going on in most people's minds right now. Like this has taught me how unsustainable work has been.
Right. Right.
And you may invite me back into the office and I might say, no, thank you,
Yep.
because I am
Yep.
just too tired.
Yeah.
Um,
You
so
know,
I think it's something to pay attention to as leaders.
absolutely. And to bring that conversation to leaders themselves, boundaries. Like
Oh,
that's boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. And I think it's one thing. I've always said, and I had a stint in sports, working in the athletic arenas. And one of the things that I firmly believe is that if someone is holding a leadership position, right? Just because they're in that position doesn't make them an effective leader. But nevertheless, when those individuals don't know how to draw boundaries for themselves, they they don't end up drawing boundaries or maintaining boundaries for their people.
mm,
And that is where I think a lot of worry comes from in the
yeah,
workplace,
yeah.
right? And so if, for example, I had a client who worked with a gentleman and he worked all day and all night. And so his expectation, and his children, he had children, but they were older. And so his expectation of his staff, whether they were single, whether they were married with older children or younger children, regardless, is that they were on the same schedule of not having boundaries as he was. And so you have a work environment where people are not living to they're not working to their potential. They're not as productive as you mentioned. They're consistently worrying, right, about job security. And I just think it's really important that organizations are helping managers and leaders learn the skills that are supportive of their staff.
Yeah, yeah. And here's what the thing I might add to what you just said is like that leader you're talking about had an expectation that his teams would follow that same kind of work style, those really soft, porous boundaries. I'd suggest that even if you can't say to your people, do as I say, not as I do. Because
Right.
I've worked for people who've said, oh, I know I'm working this weekend, but you don't have to. Well, I don't know about that. If I see you working weekend after weekend, it becomes contagious.
Yeah, it
And
does.
I start to internalize this message of like, well, your success, your higher level is due to the fact that you're willing to work every weekend. If I want that, the company has rewarded you. If
Yep.
I want those rewards, then maybe I should mimic your behavior. So you can say all you want
Hmm.
as a leader, you don't have to do this. It's my personal choice, but the message you're sending is this is what leads to good results professionally. And I
Yeah,
think that's super risky.
absolutely.
Yeah, that was very damaging to me.
Absolutely. Well, Nyla, I want to be respectful of our boundaries.
I
And
appreciate that.
yes, and I want to be respectful that you and I have both used COVID-19 in July 2020 to give a pause to all the things that matter. You're with your
Yeah,
family, I'm outside, I'm enjoying nature. And so I just want to say thank you so much for the conversation.
thank you. This was so fun.
It was. I think I'm going to go spend some time for a walk out here.
Enjoy it, and enjoy the holiday weekend. And we'll
Thank you.
talk soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bye, Carrie.
Bye. Okay. So was that good for you?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I'll be curious to see when you send me the recording, what I can use, and
Yeah.
I love this idea of probably using sound. I'm going to play with a friend of mine sent me a video. I'm going to send it to you from YouTube that she downloaded on
Okay.
how to use sound on social, how do you share podcast clips to Instagram. And again, if you can do it with this, you did a podcast, why not do it for LinkedIn?
Yeah. And the funny thing is I have a testimonial from a student, and she sent it to me as an audio recording. But I have I have been racking my brain trying to figure out how to just put her picture on it and only the recording. So yes,
I just sent you something from YouTube, and
thank you.
I bet, you know what, if we posted something on the group and said, we need to find someone who makes social images, like if someone's got a VA who does this, someone, I think this is where like I'm learning, like you can spend 4 hours learning this, or you can pay some about $100 to do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And your rate what's your hourly coaching rate right now?
I don't have one. I have got to figure it out.
Wait, what do you do? Packages for people?
Yeah, well, I haven't sold anything yet because I literally am just starting.
Okay. So
So
when you
I
say a
have
client, who are your clients?
individuals, but they would be purchasing a package.
Right, of course. But when the people who you're referring to in these talks,
Oh,
clients, you
and
talk about formers.
yeah, so I was just reframing how I referred to them. But the one about the leadership, it was so funny about her evaluation. That actually was yesterday, because it was a girl that I had worked with when I was at UConn. She was a grad student. She was like, Carrie, I just used to love talking to you. You were always so helpful. And the night before, we all just got together after over 15 years. We hadn't seen each other and
Oh,
talked. And so they were like, well, Carrie, what are you up to? So I told them. She called me yesterday and was like, this is what happened to me. Would you be willing to work with me? And I
yes.
was
Sell
like,
her a package.
right. And I said, absolutely. I said, but even better, because you work in higher ed, your athletic department will be paying for it.
Yeah.
And so I sent her a proposal that I did for someone else, and it was like $3,000 for individual coaching.
For how
But
long?
I honestly just don't remember. And I
Okay.
told her, I said, if they say that the price is too much, because you would really be my very first one-on-one client, we can work through that because you're the first one.
Well, let me give you I'll give you some sense of pricing for me. And again, New York's a different market than North
Yeah.
Carolina. But
Yeah.
I want to hook you up with somebody who's a good friend of mine in the Durham area. That's where you are, right? The Raleigh-Durham area?
Charlotte, but it's close enough.
Charlotte. Okay.
I'm in
In
Charlotte.
part because he's involved with, he has a private practice where he does a lot of consulting, primarily in org culture and coaching. And he does a lot of work with NC State in their entrepreneurship department.
Yeah.
So that might just be someone for you to know in the area who's
Yeah,
4 or 5 years ahead of you in terms of being
Mhm.
independent. He used to work for a consulting firm we used to hire at Columbia. And I just think I think he's great. And he's super well networked in the area. So
Yeah,
in
thank
terms of
you.
having in terms of thinking about like a portfolio of work, is just how my approach. But I'll tell you, Columbia for coaching, again, is private and it's New York City. But
Mhm.
a corporate coaching gig right now for me can run between $18,000 and $25,000 for 6 months of work, which includes a 360.
Yep. Mhm.
And usually, stakeholder meetings with the manager, and
Mhm.
then 2 times a month coaching with the client.
Okay. So
Okay, so I would say 18 for me. I'm between 18 for like a startup, things that are a little less established, and 25 for like a bank or American
Yeah.
Express, like a more company. All right.
Mhm.
Columbia pays between 10 and 15 for coaching. Same thing, 6 months, 360, manager meeting at the midpoint and at the end.
Okay.
Privately right now, like if someone calls me, works with me privately, my rate right now, although I will be changing it in September thanks to our call last week,
Yeah.
is $600 a month with a minimum of 3 months, 2 meetings a month, plus email, and usually I do
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a 10-minute check-in. So my normal cadence is we meet every other week. And then once a month, if you're feeling like I'm about to walk into a meeting, I just want to review, or I want to debrief something, 10-minute phone call. That's a package for 1 month, $600. When I started, I was a little cheaper. My hourly went rate for individuals, like out of my own pocket, was like 125 a month, and it went to 150. I mean, a session. Then I stopped the 125 to 150. Then I stopped selling individual hours and I started doing months. But I have a minimum of 3 months, unless you're
I remember
continuing
you
client.
said that. I remember you saying that, and I was like, that's
Because I don't think listen, there are people, like a former student who calls you and who you have a relationship with, them, they understand your thinking. I think you can do a single session or 2 sessions and be impactful. It is really hard to get lasting results from a single conversation.
You're right.
And so I feel like if I want them to succeed and believe in the work, they have to make a commitment.
Yeah, that's
so
really
I
good.
offer that. It's just, and again, I'm playing with my prices because I know I've totally underpriced the summer program I'm doing.
Really?
Yeah, it's okay. You know what? I'm learning.
Yeah.
So I'm going to offer it again in the fall, and right now it was $549 for the 4 weeks plus a call. I won't do that again. I'll probably do like $750 for the future, and then in 2021.
And you do it for the same amount of time?
Yeah.
$750 for 4 weeks and 1 call?
Yeah, 1 call, because right now a single month is $600. That's 2 calls. So you're getting 4 calls. Again, it's not one-on-one, but it's more like teaching. It's more like me teaching.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna do it. And I don't find that people balk at the price. I never have found that someone said no because of money. Sometimes people say no because they're like, I can't, because my point of view is, I say to people, you should expect 3 hours of work a week yourself, in addition to our call, in terms of like reflection, reading, networking, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
That can sometimes be a barrier for people to sign up. But I'm like, you know what, then you're not my person. Because I want someone who's going to do the work.
Have you turned down clients?
I refunded somebody and gave her money back and sent her someone else, because she said she wanted to be more successful at work, and what she really wanted to do was get into a B school program. And I was like, I don't do that kind of work. And you should have been clearer with me. She didn't know, I think, but she was ultimately quite disappointed with me because I wouldn't help her with her application. I said, I'm not the kind of, I'm not going to help you. I'm not, just because I worked at a B school for 20 years doesn't mean I can get you into B school.
Right.
But I refunded her. I have one client right now I kind of wish I had said no to, because developmentally she's not where she needs to be to do the work that we're doing together. She's just immature, and she wants me to fix problems for her as opposed to teach her how to fix her own problems. But I think, my guess is we all kiss some frogs sometimes,
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely. Crazy.
So remind me. So what I'm going to do is introduce you to my friend Scott. I'll take care of that. Maybe I'll do it through LinkedIn, I think.
Okay.
Because he's on there all the time. Yeah, I just think it'd be good for him to know somebody in the area too.
And if there's any way I can support you, please let me know.
You can keep me honest about pricing, because that's always my thing. Is like, I will probably have materials to run by you at some point. Like, we're in this for the long haul,
Yeah,
but,
we are.
Yeah, but I think just keeping us honest in those conversations on Sunday nights, and continuing to, like, this idea was brilliant to say, like, let's just do it. Like, even if I use just sound from here, not image, fine. Like, it's better than I'm doing right now.
Yeah, same here.
Because in that group, I think we're the 2 who are leadership coaches. We probably have opportunities to partner, and
yeah,
it'll be interesting. I think we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, we will. And one of the things that I found is I was rushing, and I think it is a year. It is a year-long process.
I know.
And so, we don't have to, for some people, it doesn't have to be a sense of urgency all the time.
Right. Mostly urgency is self-managed, right? Like, I bring it on myself. There's no one's, my husband's like, we'll figure this out. I know. Listen, Carrie, you know how to make money. Like, if the shit hits the fan, you'll go teach communications training at some company.
Absolutely.
Because, like, you spend a weekend designing a program and do it.
Right. And if I really need to, I'll go back to doing athletic training and do something with somebody, and they can pay me for that because I'm still certified. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to remember that, there's always ways to make money. The question is, can you make money bringing your unique gift to the world? That's what we're doing.
Yep, that's what we're doing.
This was
All right.
awesome. Wait, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take a picture and I'm gonna put it on the Facebook
Oh
group.
yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
I'll see you
All right.
later.
Have a
See you
great weekend. Enjoy the
Sunday.
holiday. Yes, you will.
Thanks, you
Okay.
too. Bye bye.
Bye.
You have to hang up. I don't know how.